is one of the top evaluators in the National Football League, and he has been around one of the greatest content providers the NFL or any sports or any media company has ever put out their NFL films. Greg Cosell back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Greg?
Rich, it's so good to be with you. How you doing?
I'm excited. It's draft month, Greg. 1 month from today, we will actually have the entire first round puzzle already put together. So many questions being answered. Let's start with your evaluation of the quarterback class, and who do you have at the top of your quarterback class rung right now, Greg Cosell?
You know, it's funny. I watched a lot of these guys very early in the process, pretty much right after the NFL season ends, and then I went back and looked at a little bit more, which I kind of do every year. And I think Trevor Lawrence would probably still be at the head of my class, but the more I watched Zach Wilson, the more I'm very, very intrigued. Now, I don't think he's at the level. I've heard some say he's Aaron Rodgers, he's Patrick Mahomes. I don't think he's at that level. But there's something about the looseness in his body. He's got a live arm, not a power arm. Like, he doesn't have an arm like, let's say, Matthew Stafford. But he's got a live, loose arm. He's very loose with his body. He moves extremely well. As you know, Rich, no quarterback comes into the NFL a finished product. So when you talk about things that are questions, they're questions. It doesn't mean they can't do it. Now, he only was in one game this year in an environment that he'll face far more often in the NFL, and that was against Coastal Carolina, where he faced fairly consistent pressure and did not handle himself particularly well. Now, that doesn't mean he won't handle himself well as we go forward and he plays in the league, but that's a question. But I would say overall, Lawrence would probably still be my guy at the top.
Well, I mean, again, the fact that you are even close to equivocating on this, Greg, means that Zach has clearly got a skill set that is something else. So, what do you?
Well, I think that comes too from the fact that. Look, you know what I do. I watch the tape. I've actually been around Trevor Lawrence, and he's a terrific kid, but I've not been around Zach Wilson, so I couldn't speak to that.
Right.
But I think there was a sense of Lawrence, and this doesn't concern me when I watch tape, as you know, Rich, because you know what I do, but there was a sense that Lawrence was generational, and I think people started with that as their standard. So anything less than talking about him in that way meant that, oh, my God, what's wrong? Something's wrong here.
Right.
I didn't start there. I just put the tape on, and I think that Trevor Lawrence is a very good prospect. He's got high-level traits in many areas, but I did not come away from watching his tape. And by the way, I watched 8 games in 2019 and 8 games in 2020.
Right.
So I watched 16 full games. I did not come away watching Trevor Lawrence tape thinking that he was generational. I came away thinking this kid's a good prospect with higher-level traits.
Well, I mean, generational is what's been, thrown in his direction, and Urban Meyer's not just scratching an itch just for the sake of it. I mean, he's coming into the NFL because he knows Trevor Lawrence is going to be his quarterback, and
right.
So, what are your question marks about Trevor Lawrence then, Greg Cosell?
I think there's one in particular, and again, now you have to see how it plays out in the NFL. Trevor Lawrence is a little bit of a body thrower. He's a strider. And if you look, which I did very carefully, at the playoff games he's been in over the last 2 years, when he gets pressure up the middle, because he's a strider and because he throws with his body, he's not a short strider. He steps into it. And he gets his body into his throws, he tends to rush his mechanics when there's pressure in his face, inside. And when he rushes his mechanics, he tends to get a little scattershot and inaccurate. Now, there might be games where you go through a whole game and you don't face that kind of pressure in a given game. There might be a game where you face that pressure on 7 or 8 throws. Every game is different. Every game plays out differently. But that's something that I think is again, a question. These are not situations where you're saying, oh, he can't play in the league, he's no good. It's a question. The tape told me it's a question.
Greg Cosell, senior producer, NFL Films, and of course NFL Matchup, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. So you're high on Wilson to the point where you're saying that probably Lawrence is a better prospect coming out of college. So walk me through the evaluation you think the Jets are doing right now with Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson.
Yeah, that's a great question.
What do you think?
Because it's easy after 3 years, and we've discussed Sam Darnold, you and I,
yes,
to say that Darnold did not meet expectations. And maybe there's many reasons for that. Some we might know, some we don't know. But if you're the Jets, it would seem to me that you would have to believe that Zach Wilson is far, far better than Sam Darnold within the context of your new offense with a new coach who's essentially bringing in the Kyle Shanahan offense. Because if you just believe that Zach Wilson is just maybe incrementally better than Sam Darnold, I don't know. Again, I don't know what they're going to do, but you would have to believe Wilson's significantly better. Darnold was a consensus top pick in a draft. There were people who thought he'd be the number one pick. It hasn't gone well. There were concerns about Darnold coming out. Those concerns have been manifested over the last number of years. So we'll see what the Jets do. My guess is, and this factors into the equation, Rich, and you know this, if you draft Zach Wilson, you start the clock again. Whereas if you don't draft a quarterback and Sam Darnold's your guy, you know what it's going to be in New York if Sam Darnold, let's say, has a poor first half week one. You know how that goes. Whereas you restart the clock with Zach Wilson.
No, you don't want to maybe saddle a new coaching staff, new regime with that sort of pressure or possibility of occurring, and then you're right. The next step is the proverbial Lulu. So what is your evaluation, though? What is your evaluation of Wilson to Darnold with your evaluation of Darnold coming out and having seen 3 years, even though admittedly Darnold has not had the consistency in terms of talent and, of course, also in terms of coaching surrounding him the last 3 years? What's your evaluation of what the Jets are going through then, Greg?
I think Darnold has essentially been relatively the same player he was coming out. He's a big, physical, athletic kid, good arm, some inconsistency with his ball placement, which stems from his lower body mechanics, capable of making plays outside the structure of the offense, but also loses vision at times when he gets outside the structure of the offense and can make some poor throws. So there's a lot to like and a few concerns with Darnold, and those concerns have shown up over the last 3 years, just as they did with his college tape. I think that Zach Wilson is a little smaller. I would say his arm is looser and livelier. Darnold has a good arm, but I would say Wilson's arm is looser and livelier. I think he's an easier mover, just the way in which he moves. They're both capable of making plays outside of structure. Wilson was his senior tape, his 2020 tape in particular, he was a very comfortable player because he rarely faced pressure. So that's the part of Wilson's game. Even though he's a very good mover and can make plays outside of structure, he did not face much pressure. And you have to wait and see how that will play out once he's in the NFL.
Greg Cosell here on the Rich Eisen Show. So we've established your top two. Who's next? You got three more first-round grade quarterbacks that we're all talking about. What do you got for me on that, Greg?
To me, and this is a fascinating conversation. I've talked to a lot of people about it because I'm fascinated in this sort of as a philosophical discussion. And let's talk about Mac Jones. The philosophical discussion is this. What is the balance now in the NFL, Rich, between being able to play from the pocket and then having to play outside of structure? Is that now a necessity in the NFL? If you believe it's a necessity, philosophically, then Mac Jones is not your guy. If you don't believe it's a necessity but a luxury and you can still function very well without a problem, then you might really, really like Mac Jones. Mac Jones is really good in a lot of areas. He's a short strider. He's got great balance. He's very quick with where he wants to go with the football. He's consistently precise with his ball placement. He's very quick with his decision making. There's a lot to like about Mac Jones. He's just not a very good athlete. He's not going to make plays outside of structure. So if it's 3rd and 9 in a critical moment, and a critical moment could be any time in the game. Critical moments don't just happen in the last 2 minutes. If it's 3rd and 9 and the defense tactically wins and gets a rusher right to Mac Jones quickly, that play's dead. So you have to decide, is that important to you? Is that not important to you? How important to you it is? It's a philosophical question that different coaches, I'm sure, would answer differently.
So one coach that just traded up for the 3rd overall selection, Greg Cosell, I think thinks that he can scheme somebody open and needs a quarterback that plays within his structure. So I think I might have the answer to the question that prefaced your evaluation of Mac Jones. Who do you think?
Well, the other part of that equation is Trey Lance.
Right.
Trey Lance played in an offense where he played under center quite a bit. In fact, he played in an offense with a fullback. He is the most refined and advanced quarterback in this draft in the conventional play-action pass game, and by conventional I mean operating under center, because he's done it a ton in college. Quarterbacks in college today don't normally do that. Trey Lance has done that more than any of these top quarterbacks. So would you look at Trey Lance and say, hey, he's been under center, he's played with a fullback, he can fit Kyle Shanahan's offense as well? This is the fun of this, Rich. We're speculating.
We are.
But that's, so I don't know. But you're right about Kyle. I think Kyle is the kind of coach who believes so strongly, as many coaches do, of course, believes so strongly in his system that he believes his system takes care of the structure, defines the reads and the throws for the quarterback, and that Mac Jones could well be the kind of quarterback that he would want.
And then, so before we get to Justin Fields, then what is your answer to the question that you posed, having seen all the tape of every snap of pretty much not only these kids, but the last several years in the NFL, and in years before that, Greg, watching the evolution of the game? What is the answer to your question about the attributes of a quarterback you'd want?
You know what? I've gone back and forth on that so many times in my mind, Rich. I mean, and I've talked to so many people I highly respect, that you would highly respect as well. And, they're not sure. I mean, it's a tough deal because go to the NFC Championship game, okay?
Yep.
You had the Packers and the Bucks. Now, we know that Kevin King made a bonehead play that allowed a touchdown at the end of the first half that should never have happened, okay?
Right.
Let's say that didn't happen. Now, it did, but let's say it didn't. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady threw 3 interceptions in the second half. One of them came when there was pressure to his front side that was not picked up. And what did he do? He just threw the ball up for grabs that Jari Alexander intercepted, because Tom Brady has no response to that. And I don't want people listening to think, you're talking about the greatest of all time.
No.
I know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, right.
I'm using that as an example.
Of course.
He had nothing to do except throw the ball up. Patrick Mahomes or another quarterback, Josh Allen, they have something to do in that situation. So it's a very hard question to answer, because more than likely there will be those situations in games.
Well, I mean, Mahomes' entire Super Bowl 55 experience, Greg, was doing what he needed to do to get out of danger, and damn near even completed 2 of the most incredible would-be touchdowns in the history of the biggest game. I mean, so I guess you can go back and forth on all of that.
Which coaches do, by the way. I mean, that's what they do. It's a hard. This stuff's not easy. That's why they make a few more bucks than I do, and then but they're also in a more volatile profession, fortunately, than I am.
Greg Cosell, NFL Films producer, analyst here on the Rich Eisen Show. What is your evaluation of Justin Fields, Greg?
Justin Fields is a super high traits prospect. I mean, he's got just really high-level traits. I think if he's the kind of quarterback that if he puts it all together could be absolutely sensational. I would say this, and again, this is all based on tape study. I don't care about all the noise. That's irrelevant to me.
Yes.
I think that he enters the league as I said, a high-level traits prospect, both as a thrower and an athlete. In some ways, he's kind of like Cam Newton. He's just a little smaller, but he's solidly built. He's a great athlete. I would say there's been some inconsistency based on tape study in what he sees, in his vision, at times in his ability to eliminate what's not there and isolate what is there. I always struggle to say that because I don't know exactly how he's coached, and I'm not one who gets to sit down with the player or speak to the head coach. So I always, at times, I'm uncertain as to say that. I just think the film shows that a little bit. Now, do I think that these are things that can't be fixed? No, I don't. But I think that you have to think of it this way. Think of Josh Allen. Quarterbacks that have movement ability. It's funny we're saying this after we just spoke about Mac Jones and the balance between movement and pocket. Quarterbacks that have great movement ability, they can make plays off script and outside of structure as they're learning the game. And Josh Allen is such a good example. Look at the progression, year 1 to year 2 to year 3. Could Justin Fields be that kind of player, particularly if he has to start early, which you would guess that he would because he'll probably go early in the draft.
Greg Cosell, a couple more minutes left with him here, senior NFL films producer, NFL matchup analyst. Give me the name of a kid that somebody like a Bears fan can hang their hat on as Ryan Pace is extolling the virtues of Andy Dalton. And I'm serious here because and I truly have nothing but the greatest of respect to Andy Dalton, and I know I just all due respected him ad hoc, which is not fair. But but Bears fans are looking at Russell Wilson and maybe even Deshaun Watson, and it doesn't seem like either of them are going to be walking through that door, to use the Patino phrase. But who, when you're down lower in the first round, or you might be just sitting there in the front end of the second round and trading up to go get somebody to get a fifth year of eligibility, is there another quarterback that you like that you think has an upside that does require that sort of movement in the first round or top second?
As you know, when you start getting lower beyond the sort of top, I guess it would be top 5, maybe top 4 or 5. Then you start to deal with guys who have some weaknesses, some more defined weaknesses.
Right.
The quarterback, I really wish had stayed in college, but I think he's got traits. He's going to need coaching and he's going to need experience. Is Davis Mills. Now, Davis Mills' tape, he's only started 11 games. He never played a full season in college at Stanford. He came out of the Atlanta, Georgia area as the number 1 pocket quarterback in the country as a high school player. There's traits there, but he started 11 games. And the tape is not worthy of a high pick. But you could easily look at him and think, I could make this guy into a quarterback at some point. It's just a matter of what point that is and what the rest of the team is. Look, Rich, there's so many variables involved with quarterback play. There's so many. And much depends on the rest of your team.
Well, I mean, that's food for thought as I sit there with David Shaw in the first round of the NFL draft coverage on NFL Network. I'll file that one.
Well, he'll be able to tell you a lot more about Davis Mills than I will.
I'm sure, but at least it's some food for thought. Put him on my radar screen for that night. Last one for you, ones plural. I don't usually do rapid fire, Greg, but comp these guys for me. I think you already mentioned Justin Fields. Would you say Cam Newton's a comp for him? Give me some good comps as we're a month away from getting some answers.
I don't know if he's a comp overall. I just think, body type, athleticism, Fields is a great athlete. I mean, and he throws the ball well. I just thought of that just from his body type and the way he moves.
So what comp would you have for Trevor Lawrence? You got a comp for me?
I don't really. It's funny, when I do this, Rich, either a guy pops into my head right away when I'm watching a player, or I don't sit around for 20 minutes after I finish watching tape of a player and say, who does he remind me of? It either pops into my head or it doesn't.
Well, we demand comps, Greg, so let me keep going here. Maybe one pops in your head. What about Zach Wilson? Is there a comp for him? You got a comp for him? I mean, you named like Mahomes and
but he's not at that level of arm talent. I mean, he's got, like I said, he's got a live arm and he moves well, and he'll make some throws that are really nice. But I don't think he's quite at that level of arm talent. I know some people think that, but he plays like that. The thing about Mahomes, and you know this, And it's easy now to say, oh, everybody was an idiot. But don't forget, Mahomes was the 10th pick in the draft. The Chiefs traded up to get him. I remember being at the Combine that year speaking to really respected offensive coaches in the league who were very concerned about the reckless, undisciplined way Mahomes played in college. Now, Wilson has a little of that to his game as well, but we've seen how Mahomes has played out in the league. He's with a great coach as well, so we'll see how it plays out with Wilson, but he's got that kind of looseness to his movement as well.
Greg, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Maybe we'll tap on your shoulder in the next couple of weeks right before the draft. Get your final thoughts. I really appreciate it always.
Oh, Rich, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
You got it, Greg. Greg Cosell. Not only has he just got such a keen eye, but real quick, the insight that he just gave you at the end there, at the Combine, speaking to highly respected people who are concerned about Mahomes' ability to play in control, a little bit too wild, throwing in certain windows.
Yep. And
And a lot of coaches are like, I don't want any part of that. And then there's Andy Reid saying, I coach Brett Favre. I want that.
right, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah,
and thus now a dynasty has a possibility of being born.
Unbelievable.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.